All right, today is not our regular session. It's one of those sessions that we talk about whatever that's on our mind. So, Mihail, why don't you, if you have any particular thoughts that you want to talk about, why don't you tell me what's on your mind?
Sure.
Mhm.
So, Inso, I would like you to share your expertise when it comes to developing software. Like, for example, I know that there are lots of business people
Uh-huh.
out there that they think about developing software, but they don't have the right skills. They don't have development skills.
Mhm.
And I think it's really important for them to actually understand how software is developed, or what is the process. I mean, what do we start with? What kind of risks do we need to take? Even on
Mhm.
a basic level, I think it will help them a lot
Mhm.
if we can talk about.
Okay. I mean, so let's just be on the same page here. We're talking about people who are business
Mhm.
focused.
Yeah.
But probably specifically what we're talking about is people who previously have no experience with software, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, these days that the startups are pretty hot,
Yes.
right? So there are a lot of the business founders that they want to find the mythical technical co-founder
hmm
who will do one of the following. One, takes 1% of equity
hmm
and 0%, $0 of salary,
hmm
and then work 24/7
Yeah.
and to deliver the product. Is this what we're
hmm
talking about here?
Yes. Mm,
All right. I mean, I'm being a little bit of
mm,
sarcastic here, but
mm,
there are certainly a lot of people out there who don't have a lot of software development experience, and part of
mm,
what we're trying to do is we're trying to help people who don't have those experiences to gain the necessary experiences. So,
mhm,
in many ways, what they're trying to do is not a wrong thing to do. You do want to
mm,
find someone to work with. This is a pretty good approach because
mhm,
after all, we're in the age of specialization.
mhm,
So what it means is that, hey, if you're a great business person and the next coming of Steve Jobs, then obviously
mm,
if you can find your Steve Wozniak, then a lot of
mhm.
things can take care of itself. Now,
Sure.
but this is obviously a very difficult combination to pull off. So the question is, how do you find someone to work with?
Mhm,
And if you cannot find someone to work with, then what other alternatives are there, right?
mhm, mhm,
So obviously, let's put some potential alternatives out there right now. One, if you cannot, you can find someone,
mhm,
or you can do it yourself. So that's pretty much the two large branch, right? And
mhm,
but two is that there's also another branch, and third branch is this: is don't build software.
mhm,
Okay, instead of trying to build software, buy software that's already built.
mhm, mhm, mhm,
Okay, for a lot of I mean not developers, for a lot of business people, this is probably the best thing for you to do.
mhm,
Instead of building software, make use of what's available out there. If you need a site, use WordPress.
mhm,
Okay, WordPress does a pretty good job for a lot of different people. If you need a e-commerce solution for it, WordPress has a lot of e-commerce solutions. I think the main one is WooCommerce. There's
mhm,
probably other ones, but WordPress is not, it's not my personal stuff, so I don't spend a lot of time with it. But
mhm,
you can also there's a lot of different things. There's a whole marketplace
mhm,
surrounding providing different type of capabilities around WordPress. So anybody who is providing some sort of if what their distinguishing feature is that they need a site so they can provide some sort of services or products,
mhm,
then what they should try to do is try to think of the site that they're trying to build, the product that they is not the product they're trying or the service that they're trying to sell. So they should not focus on this at all. They should try to reduce this and use stock tool as much as possible. Or, you know, if it's not WordPress, then maybe something like Wix. I mean, honestly, there's just so many of them that you cannot even keep track of exactly how many different type of things that you can use. But don't build software, buy software. Honestly, it's probably the best thing for most business people to start with. And because the goal is not that you're trying to build a technology system, you're trying to create a business. I'm assuming. I mean, maybe the person is really trying to build some sort of software that we don't know about, right? But if you're trying to create some sort of business, and that business can be easy, it's not too different from like, you know, just providing some sort of services or some sort of products that people can buy off a shopping cart. Then, you know, the solutions out there today are probably going to be good enough until you get to a particular scale. So start with trying to build that business instead of trying to build software. Okay. And if you can build businesses and then you can then have enough revenues, if you can generate enough revenues, then you can hire people. You know, and at that time finding that someone, it's going to be much easier than trying to find this mythical technical co-founder who's going to take this particular type of deal. You can actually potentially pay someone 100K salary, and there's gonna be a lot of people who will sign up at this particular range, who will join you to try to say, hey, that's a good salary, I'll try to come and work for you. And you can probably give them 0% equity in that case. You know, although that if you really want to compete in the tech world, you will have to have some equity in the game because to attract the true talented people. So, but this type of deal is much easier when you have a business that's already running. Okay. So business people need to do this. Business people need to bring something to the table. And that something is one of the following: funding and existing business. Or, you know, you have some sort of a connections, truly proven connections. I mean, let me put it this way, I've seen people who actually truly have connections, but those connections are useless for their next startup. Because their next startup is not the people that they have connected to, VCs, whoever, is not biting on the next idea they're trying to sell. Okay. So even connection, something like that, is probably pretty weak. Otherwise, you have to be great at marketing or sales. Okay. I mean, I'm not sure, you know, it should be pretty straightforward to see that there is some sort of pattern here. And that pattern is to be able to bring money to the table. Right. And this because in order to run a business, you need to be able to fund it. And even if you have a tech co-founder, let's just say that you have a great friend who's a tech co-founder, material, that person is probably not going to be able to do this thing alone if that person has to build everything from scratch. Right? So chances are that you need a team. And when you need a team, you're reducing the chance of everybody will sign up for you know, these type of mythical deals. Basically, you know, maybe one person will buy on a deal like this, but when you have multiple people, then you really definitely need to have the ability to fund the project. Right. So I think if we then go back and look at this, so unless you're a VC, you're someone who the VC knows very well, chances are that this is probably the easiest process. Just try to run your business. I mean, what is it? I don't know. Maybe it's to do import-export from China to, you know, finding something that people want to buy on Amazon, source it from China, and then sell on Amazon for cheaper prices than other Amazon competitors, right? That's a business, and that's a business that you can run without having to have a tech co-founder, and you can generate a lot of money on doing that business.
Yeah.
Right. And you know, what are some of the other business? Like, say, for example, someone might wants to, I don't know, trying to create some sort of what would be one like Q&A, you know, maybe someone wants to run a Q&A site, right?
Like a forum or Q&A.
Yeah, forum and Q&A for maybe some particular topic. Today there are open source tools out there that can, allow that. It's like, Stack Overflow. Just go grab the Stack Exchange deck and, hire someone, contractor, to get it set up. Or actually, it's not hard to get it set up. Or if you just run on the Stack Exchange site, you can create a site by yourself without you having to know how to set things up. You just have to, go through, click, and then here's a new site. And then it's time for you to just go ahead and run it, basically.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And after you get successful, then, get your own domain name, get it redirected, things like that. So, so if you can run your business, then, and you can make it successful, you can really do it with the existing tools that's out there today. It may be that you do need want to customize it to some point, but think of a way to do it without having to do a lot of customization in the beginning is really probably the right approach for most business people. Once you have the money, you can hire anyone. You can really be the boss. And when you don't have any money at all and you don't know how to build it, poor developers can write a code and can try to build something themselves. They don't need to hire someone else to do the work for them, assuming they're decently good. But business people cannot do that. Business people have to then focus on the other way. They have to focus on bringing the money, right? So that's really the differences. What do you think about what I said so far? Any thoughts?
I think it makes sense. I mean, even in my experience, I think I'm always looking for solutions that I can use. For example, if I want to develop something at least remotely related to tech or software, then first I will look at solutions that already exist, and I can just simply drag and drop them into my site, and I can just simply use them without training. One interesting question that I came up with, I think it's related to our discussion, is that it's very difficult actually to find those developers if you decide to hire developers for your project. So, and even if you have a budget, I think obviously people use those freelancing sites, and there are lots of developers on those sites. But the thing is, I'm not convinced. Like, for example, if I would be making this decision, I wouldn't be relying on freelancing site to help me to find a good developer. It's almost like I don't know, shooting in the dark. Like you have no idea who are these people, how well they can do the job, what is their experience. Sometimes they're even anonymous to you, so like you don't even know them at all.
So we're saying that we're going beyond the initial stage now. We're saying that now this business person is no longer the type of people. There's no longer the type of people that we're talking about in the beginning. This business person is now a successful business person. Someone who is actually having a running business. And so now it's time to hire someone, right? But because with lack of experiences, so therefore doesn't know where to get started, right? Okay, so there's a couple ways then you can look at that. One is that, again, when we say that there's a budget, there's every single person's budget is somewhat limited. But the question is how limited? And what is your sensitivity, right? So, for example, freelancing site, why do they exist? Because they don't exist as a quality system. What they exist is as a cheap system, right? So basically, if you're price sensitive, then you'll be going to these freelancing sites to find the best deals. This is a place where you feel like that you have a project and then multiple people bid on your thing. So it's up to you to drive the price down, right? So this is a situation where that the business person can see a lot of people bidding on it. Then you have to try to figure out, say, who is the best. But a lot of time, what happens is that because they're price sensitive, that's part of the reason why they're on a site like this. Usually what they end up seeing is that the person that's the cheapest is going to be favored quite a lot versus the person that's expensive. And, can you really say for sure that the person's cheaper is going to be able to do a better job? You cannot say that for sure. You also don't know for sure whether or not the person is more expensive would do a better job either. you know, but because of the fact that you have a limited budget, so you want to stretch your budget, right? And so therefore, chances of the person who's underbidding others will get higher a lot, and then, you know, that this is where that a lot of things gets burned. Now, if your budget is much higher, then even though that you still have a sensitivity, you now have more options for you. You can go into larger consulting shops. Okay, you can hire, say, for example, from companies like Accenture, if you really have a lot of money. Okay, now Accenture does work for Fortune 500 companies. Now, does Accenture deliver every single project successfully? They don't. But they do. There's a reason why the Fortune 500 companies hire them. It's because they do projects more successful than they fail on the projects, right? And if Accenture is too high end, you know, companies like Infosys, and you know, there are some other. So there's the Indian companies and there are some Chinese companies that will also be at the premium tier as well. That you can reach out to them to try to hire them. Now, again, you know, their price point is gonna be much higher than the price point that you're going to get from the freelancing side. But your chance of ensuring something is quality also correspondingly goes a lot higher. You know, it's not that it's going to be 100% successful, but there's a reason why that they can stay in business and charge that type of price point. Okay, so when does freelance work? Freelance works when you know what you're buying. Okay, if you know what you're buying, you know, like it's kind of like this. There are people who buys a computer, and there are people who buys computer parts. Okay, people who buy a computer sometimes because they don't have the time, but a lot of times because they don't know how to put together computer parts. Right now, these days computers have such a low margin that buying a computer parts and buying computer is somewhat equivalent to each other. But if you know, in a situation where that's not, you can buy computer parts and then you can build your own self a computer and come out ahead on the prices if you know what you're doing. And going to freelancing site is exactly that. All right. Instead of a full solution shop, this is a full solution. Okay. You say, I want whatever you want to build. I want to build this. Give me a bid from beginning to the end. All I want to do is I want to go take a nap, and I want to wake up 3 months from now, and I want that software to be finished building. It's not going to go as smooth as that, but that is a full service, the type of service that these companies are providing. And whereas if you go to freelancing site, now you're the person who buys computer parts and put together a computer. So you have to know what you need. You have to be able to evaluate, is this the part that you need? So is this freelance developer good? Is that freelance designer good? And you have to be able to evaluate those skills. And then you have to have the skills to combine their labor output into something that you want to create. So for someone who wants to shop cheap, then you have to have the skill to put things together. Okay. If you don't have that skill, then you cannot really direct the people that you hire to put them together. And in that case, you're better off buying the full solution, even if you're more expensive. All right. And obviously there's a third type of person, people who knows how to put the solutions together, but don't have the time, but happen to have the budget. And that's the reason why that Fortune 500 companies hires Accenture, Infosys, you know, China Soft, so on. You know, they just they don't have the time, but they have the money, so they spend money to gain additional people to help them do what they need to do. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was thinking that it's really hard to evaluate the quality of those freelancers. For example, you can rely on reviews, but I noticed that sometimes people have, the same person might have like 5 stars and 1 star and like all over in between. So it's just I don't think reviews can help, but maybe if you have a chance to work with that person, maybe you can evaluate their skills. But if you just hire someone and you don't even know their names or even their LinkedIn profile, I think it's 100% risk in my personal opinion.
Oh yeah, I mean it depends on your risk profile, but again, it's like you said, you have a chance to work with the person, right? And work with the person obviously will help you to kind of evaluate where things are at. But does that really truly reduce the risk profile? It's hard to say. I mean, the thing is that, let me put it this way. When you, like I said, even companies like Accenture and Infosys, even they fail. Okay. Because the risk profile is not just the person that's joining, it's also the project complexity. Okay. It's also the expectation. Right. So in order for you to say whether or not something is risky, you really have to be able to start to evaluate yourself first. You have to be able to say, what do I expect as a success? How flexible am I? Can I work with another person easily? Do I have patience when things don't appear the way that I expect them to appear? What happens if there are miscommunications? Because these are all the type of things that will happen on the project, regardless of who you have. All right, and how much effort do I want to spend to chase people down to get them to do the stuff I want to do? Right? It's like, maybe the person would disappear on you for a couple hours because that person had multiple projects. You're paying this person low price, so he's not 100% on your payroll. He has three other competing projects, three other competing clients that's chasing him down, same as you, but you only get 1/4 of his time. So when you want him to respond, he's not responding. He's working on someone else's stuff. Now, are you going to be happy with that, or are you going to be pissed about that?
I think this is a really critical point, that when you bring the project to the table, you have to define the scope of that project, and you have to understand what needs to be done to the level of details where you can, like, you know everything about this project except for the programming part. In that case, maybe you have a chance to find a good programmer, and they will actually start working, and you will guide them on what needs to be done, and they will do a good job. But if you are just bringing the idea, maybe a couple of follow-up documents, it doesn't really help you, because the people don't know what to do. I mean, they can do something, of course. I mean, if you pay them money, but what exactly needs to be done, it's up to you. It's your responsibility as a business person to define it.
Yes, totally. And let me put it this way as well. This is a very challenging thing to do, because most of small business people, obviously, if they follow what we're talking about, that they spend their time trying to build up their businesses, then they're going to be 100% on that. That's going to be their focus, right? So when it comes to something that they don't understand, they haven't previously worked with, they just simply don't have the time to invest in addition to what they have to already spend on their businesses to understand how to do something like this, to try to build them. So this is going to be very challenging for them. This is the reason why that it's chances are that they are much better to spend more money to get a team like Accenture, Infosys, Chinasoft to come to the table, so that way they can take the whole project off their hands and only have to involve them as a stakeholder instead of them having to try to be a project manager. All right, but even then, it's still gonna be a lot of work, because as a stakeholder, as the person who originated the idea person, the only way for Accenture and Infosys and Chinasoft to meet to deliver against your expectation is that they had to ask you a lot of questions, and they had to continuously involve you in decision-making processes and so on. Right. So you still have to spend a lot of time on the project, but that's nothing compared against then when you're trying to be a project manager of the project. I mean, Mihail, you've been trying to be a project manager for our project so far. I mean, did they exceed your expectation on exactly what it takes?
I understand now. I understand the complexity of doing it. It's obvious that I mean, one thing is just to plan something, and then it's totally different to execute it. And so basically, yeah, I mean, these are very good points that we discussed, and I think basically for a business person, I like this is just from my own point of view, my own experience. I think that business people should actually learn not just programming skills, that they were trying to learn programming very often, but the more important thing is they need to learn project management stuff. I mean, they need to plan the project. They need to, if they really want to work with technical people effectively, they need to be able to design that project from beginning, from not just the idea, but also they need to plan it. They need to know what developers are doing, maybe except for technical stuff that actually it's up to developers.
Yeah, I mean, there will always be some business people who will luck out, who have friends who just happen to be a capable technical co-founder that's willing to work with them. So in that case, they don't have to worry about it. But what that's not gonna apply to the vast majority out there. The vast majority is never gonna have that chance. It's gonna be a pipe dream for them to come across someone like that. So this path that we're talking about is the path for most people if they really want to be able to get to some place that they're working with software technology. So, yep. Until you can be that person to have the skills to put things together, again, consider the full service shop. Those would be a much better value proposition in most cases. Except that obviously they're very expensive. So chances are that until you get to that point, you have to learn the skills, and you have to try to minimize the amount of customization. Basically, that's really what it comes down to. You have to try to say, okay, instead of trying to hire a developer, is there some available tools out there that I can buy to make it work, basically, and go from there. So keep the scope as small as possible, because that's when you can have a successful project. If the scope is large, then it's kind of like, say, instead of building a computer, I now have to build a car.
Yeah,
I had to put together a car from scratch by just parts. Then that's a lot more work, right? So
yeah, it's very, very complex actually. I mean, I think these things can be learned step by step, but you got to be a part of it. I mean, you got to be a part of that learning process, because if you're just learning from books or maybe some accidental advice people give on blogging sites, it's not gonna work. I mean, you have to actually try one of your projects and see how it works, talk to developers, maybe fail completely at first. Maybe it's okay, but as long as you don't invest too much money into it, I think it's not a complete failure. It's just a learning process.
Yeah, always start small, and always try to stay on the buy side as much as possible, and try not to do any sort of customizations. And and once you're starting to deal with customizations, then you're going to learn, and you're going to find what kind of person you are as well, because it's going to come in such a way that's not going to meet. It's going to be outside your expectations a lot, basically.
Yeah, and even from my own experience, I found that most developers, at least people I actually had a chance to work with, they're honest, professional people. They actually want to do a good job. They are very into it. I mean, they spend a lot of time doing it. It just sometimes, whenever this kind of problem happens, that they develop something that you don't want or you don't like, it means that part of this fault is on you. I mean, you are responsible for that. You need to give them the expectations. You need to communicate to them. You need to understand what needs to be done in the first place, and then after that you can, basically demand any results from them, because otherwise it doesn't work.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, obviously that people are still going to decide whatever they want to do. Just hopefully someone watching this will find it useful. Basically.
Yeah, it's a very good talk. I think it's helpful.
Okay. Anything else that you want to cover for today?
No, I think it's good.
Okay, all right then. In that case, I will pause the video.